you're still required to leave your home for an extended period of time. So we wanted to work in bringing that birth practices closer to home, support our families to reconnect with cultural knowledge, natural laws, but we also wanted to be role models in compassionate care for all women. So we wanted to show how we can make changes in our own lives and in our own families to provide compassionate care to women around us. And also we wanted to be advocates who empower women to reclaim their confidence as life givers. And so Tara talked a little bit about our situation in Manitoba. And really in Manitoba, the systems are designed to really knock down the confidence of women. The system comes in and says, you are not a good parent and we are gonna take your child from you because you don't have it in you to be a good parent. And we say that we all have it in us to be good parents. We just need to know what that looks like sometimes. And we also want to support the values and decisions of the mother and the father in relation to their pregnancy, their labor, their birth, and preparing for parenthood. So how do you want this to look? What do you want to see? What's important to you? Sorry, I have a timer on my phone, so I'm just trying to make sure that I'm there. So again, with our birth helper training, we're just sharing our knowledge. So we talk about creation stories, rites of passage, medicines, language, songs. We use teaching tools that are indigenized, I guess you could say. So these little rings there, those are dilation rings. These are all beaded. Normally they're, I don't know, metal or plastic. And then other things like this is a crocheted breast. It's a breastfeeding teaching tool. So when you look at birthing tools, if you were to order them online, they're very non-indigenous. Like they're not designed for indigenous people or people of color usually. So it's very hard to find tools that the people that you work with can connect with. And so we had some designed for us. And then just other pieces. So when we deliver our training, this is like the first kind of kit that they get to begin their birthing bundle. And then over time it grows. Like mine, I drag a suitcase along now. But this is their start. So Tara talked about Manitoba's situation. These stats are a bit old now, but at the beginning of our program, this was the picture of Manitoba. So 87% of kids who were in care were Indigenous. 670 was the average number of infants apprehended each year. 52% of those infants were apprehended within their first 30 days of life. And 26% was the approximate percentage of those infants still in care after 12 years of entering care. And it just increases, so there's all kinds of other stats with it. So we knew that we had to have a really early intervention program. So like I mentioned, we spent all this time talking with grandmothers, with elders, and always asking them, you know, what should we do to reduce rates of suicide? What can we do to address addictions? What can we do, you know, and again, they said, you know, go back to that beginning and working with women who are pregnant. And if you want to prevent apprehensions from happening, that's when you have to start working with, well, actually they said you have to start working with younger women, so girls. But a starting place would be to work with women during their pregnancy. And so I had an opportunity through my work in another position to meet Tara actually and pitch this idea to her where we would provide support to women who were at risk of having their children apprehended. So that created Restoring the Sacred Bond. And what we do is we match expectant mothers to birth helpers, and the birth helper partners with the mother through pregnancy, birth, and up to 1 year of their child's life. And this is really, really intensive support. So it's not just about, you know, going to prenatal appointments and and going to ceremony together and things like that. It's a lot more than that, and I'm going to get into that right away. So it's us, Wajidawak, Ikwewak, and the Southern First Nation Network of Care, which is the authority in Manitoba that looks after all the Southern agencies and the Southern First Nation communities and any urban centers that are in the southern part of Manitoba. I just said southern like a real lot of times. So the initiative provides early intervention to reduce the admissions to care, increase the rate and timeliness of reunification, so if there is an apprehension, that they're being reunified quicker. So the whole goal is to, well, one, prevent newborn apprehensions, but two, to keep that mother and child together for that first year of life, because the research shows that if they stay together in that first year of life, even if they're apprehended later on, like they'll most likely be reunified at some point. And then identify family or community, and then, but of course, working with families, we know that at times apprehension is going to happen, no matter, you know, how much support is there, it happens sometimes. So we also work to identify family or people in the community who can provide lifelong care when reunification isn't possible. So our goal is that if an apprehension is going to take place at birth, that everybody involved already knows what's going to happen. Mom already knows baby's going to live with auntie. Auntie already knows baby's coming. Everything's ready, it's in place, it's seamless, so that there's not, you know, a very traumatic apprehension happening at the hospital. So we look at restoring the use of Indigenous traditional practices in family service delivery that empowers families to create their own path. So we meet with agencies, we talk to their caseworkers, the families we work with can choose to share their case plan with us or not, but we just have a discussion around, okay, what do we need to do in order to ensure that this baby is leaving the hospital with their mom. And so we have a discussion, and then afterwards we have another discussion with the families that we work with and say, okay, what do you think you need to work on first, or what's your priority area? Because we can think that, oh, maybe, you know, maybe addictions treatment should be their priority, or maybe this should be their priority. But when you talk to them, often they have very different priorities. So, you know, some of their priorities are, I want to find a safe place to live first, so that when I enter into treatment, I know that I'm coming out and I'm coming to this home. And so that's what we'll work on first. So it doesn't matter what our own personal beliefs are of what their priority should be. We really empower them to make those decisions and those choices and create their path. So our whole support plan is designed around them, what they want to work on, in what order, in what priority, who do they want to have involved in that. And then we develop, we also develop tools and collect lessons learned and all of these things to support. So we're looking to scale it up, right? So right now, we're focused on Southern Manitoba, but primarily Winnipeg. So the majority of the women we work with are in Winnipeg. So how it looks is, before birth, we connect to community resources and prenatal care. So really encouraging them to access that prenatal supports. We introduce or reintroduce to ceremony. So first foods, how do you look after your body? What kind of medicines do you take to prepare your body for birth? You know, traditionally we would have made these things for our baby, like moss bags and moccasins and blankets and bonnets. So we work with them to sew those things themselves. And then writing their birth plan, how do you want your birth to look? And then building their circle of support, so who's out there, you know, that can help to support you and your new baby. And then during their birth, giving them emotional support, coordinating any birth ceremonies if they want to do birth ceremonies. We also advocate for their preferences in terms of how they want to deliver their baby, ease their physical discomfort. And then after birth, we're connecting to community resources, any public benefits, supporting the mom as she adjusts to her new infant. We explain Child and Family Services processes if necessary, and we also strengthen their social support. I'll speed it up here. And so examples of some of the support is like traditional ceremonies and teachings, breastfeeding support. In Manitoba, you used to be able to get quite a bit of breastfeeding support in the hospital, but they cut those positions. So it's really hard to get support when you're in the hospital, and we know that establishing early breastfeeding promotes the success of breastfeeding. So we provide that support. Search for an assistant, access to resources, assist in finding housing, so appropriate housing that they can feel safe in, assist in obtaining household items like furniture, baby items, assist in obtaining therapy and addiction supports. And we also utilize what's called the 7 Sacred Ways of Healing Trauma. And so that's like a very intensive, I don't even know what you would call it. It's very intensive though. But just like a way of therapy that utilizes like your physical body. So punching, kicking, screaming. So all these different things like that, but done in a very loving way. So it's like it's called psychodramatic body work. So it's a mixture of, but the 7 Sacred Ways of Healing Trauma is a mixture of this Western theory of psychodramatic body work with our traditional practices and incorporate it together. So it's actually quite successful. So I just wanted to quickly touch on some of our program adjustments because we are living in a pandemic. So it was we just started actually providing support to women really in January of 2020. And then by March, we realized, wow, our whole program that we just spent all this time designing is out the door because we can't gather. And so we had to really do like a 360 and make some changes to how we deliver our program, which is really problematic when you're doing things like ceremony and working with elders and grandmothers. It's really hard to, for the teachings to have the same impact when it's done over Zoom. You know, you don't have that same personal connection. But we did our best and did some virtual traditional teachings. We did online FaceTime, breastfeeding support. Manitoba really shut down, so we were one of the very few organizations that continued to provide social supports. So at the level that we did. So we had to really search for other organizations that were providing those supports. So this is going back to the very beginning. As the pandemic, you know, wore on, I guess you could say, more organizations were offering supports in other ways, but in the beginning we were kind of on our own a little bit. And then finding housing was more difficult because you couldn't just drop in on an open house, and you know, you had to do these virtual apartment tours, and you don't know what kind of pictures they're putting on there, right? Like if the actual house that you're viewing, I don't know, Manitoba has, or Winnipeg has lots of slumlords. So it's very hard to trust what you're seeing online. And then again, like just obtaining household items were hard. Like we have a couple organizations that you can go there and get free furniture, but they weren't doing that anymore. So, and then we have this therapist that we work with who was actually really great. And she was like, she would do online sessions, she would do phone sessions, you know, she would meet you in a park. So she was really great. So we were able to find different people to do that. And we couldn't provide our 7 Sacred Ways of Healing Trauma because it's face-to-face, it's in person. So the women that we work with on that designed like a different kind of way less intense online program but it didn't have the same impact or the same success that we had seen previously. And then just doing weekly online activities. But again, the families that we work with don't always have access to phones or computers or Wi-Fi, or the phones don't have data. And lots of times prior to the pandemic, they would go sit in McDonald's or Tim Hortons, and that's how they would message us. So we had to do some work as well with our partners, and fortunately for us, some of our partners were able to get phones and data plans and things for some of our moms. So we were very appreciative of that. So our evaluation, the way that our evaluation was designed, it's designed as a cohort comparison study. So where the outcomes of mothers who are enrolled in Restoring the Sacred Bond are compared with outcomes of mothers with similar characteristics who were not enrolled. And so as a result of this design, the outcomes can only be compared and produced after the service's end date. So in hindsight, this was very problematic, and it is problematic because it's not feasible to provide regular updates on the reduction of days in care information, so relevant to the investment outcome. So ours is funded by investors. It's a social impact bond. While the evaluation or the metric is good in that way, it doesn't allow us to see things and make adjustments quickly in terms of our goal of reducing days care. So the metric that's attached to the social impact bond, it's a sole payment metric. So with a social impact bond, you have investors, they invest, there's a cost savings to the government, and then in turn the government repays your investors with a return on their investment. So the sole metric for this program was a reduction in days care. So children of the mothers are spending fewer days in out-of-home care within their first year of life than other children. So there were other problems with this as well, because we're using our MCASE database, which we designed, we knew what we wanted to see, but our comparison data comes from CFIS, which is Manitoba's Child and Family Services database. Well, in designing the database, our database, we didn't realize that our databases aren't compatible. So when we went to pull our first data pull, it took us about 80 hours to get the data that we needed in the way that the province needed it to compare. Because our database is designed because we're supporting moms and families. So it's designed around moms and families, whereas CFIS is designed around the child. So anything that we run is based on the mom's name, anything that they run is based on the child's name. So now it's like, well, we didn't design our database to run, based on the child. So we had to make some adjustments and things like that, but it's going okay. So we did an interim, a very small, it's not even valid just because of not being able to properly pull comparison data. But in December 2020, we did like a little interim evaluation. And so the average number of days care for moms that we worked with during this time was 4.95 within the first 30 days of life, compared to provincial data, which was 10.6 days. So we know that we're having an impact. We know that what we're doing is working. And I fully believe that if we were not delivering this program in a pandemic, that it would be higher than that, the reduction of days. Because what we saw in the pandemic was relapses because there wasn't the support, or just the stress, and not being able to visit in person with your family, not being able to, just drop in with your kids and share, a meal with somebody. So we did see impacts of the pandemic, so we fully believe that we would have a better outcome. I'm almost done. So it was a sole metric for payments, but what we wanted to know more than that, or we wanted to show more than that. We already knew more than that. We already knew because the grandmothers told us that if we do this, this is what's gonna happen. But we wanted to be able to show it. And that's where our database design came in, because we wanted to show increased well-being with our moms. And so when the moms start our program, then they complete a self-assessment. Where do they think they are physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually? We designed an assessment tool for that. And so they do that at the beginning. They do it in, I think it's after 3 months with us, and then I think after a month of giving birth. I'm not sure on the exact times actually. But the assessment is done with like a clinical supervisor. So she has her master's in social work. She spent 20 years in child welfare. Really amazing woman. And so she spends time with them and goes through everything with them and really makes them feel comfortable with what we're doing. And then we also wanted to show that there's an increase in community connections. So what kinds of services are they accessing out there? Do they know about what kinds of supports that are out there and how they can access those supports and how to get involved with that? We wanted to show that there's an increase in family connections. So there's some, sometimes we have to work with them to repair relationships that have been damaged with maybe their parents or their aunties or whoever. But also with family connections, like really supporting both the mother and the father. So when you're in our program, then the father also has an opportunity to be supported. So we have a male person on staff who works with the dads, and the impact of that is huge. So in the beginning so we're all females with our one male worker, so kudos to him, he puts up with a lot. So in the beginning, it was just like our women trying to help the family as a whole unit, and we very quickly realized that the fathers needed their own type of support. It's different from what the mothers need. And also, I don't know if it's like this everywhere, but in Manitoba, fathers really get left out of the case planning. And so our view is like, even if you're not together with the mom, if you are in a position to look after your child, we're gonna work with you to look after your child. And so, and then just doing things like when we have domestic violence situations, like Todd is on the phone, like, what are you doing? We talked about this before. But really connecting them to those supports so that they can get the help that they need. And, and he's actually really just amazing. So even convincing, like some of the dads we work with had outstanding warrants, like convincing them, if you want to be a good parent, you have to deal with this because you don't want this hanging over your head forever. And so just things like that. And so we've really seen a real improvement in the men that we work with through our program and that family connectedness. And of course, increased connection to community, increased understanding of their identity. So we talk, do workshops and presentations on things like the oppression wheel and how colonization has impacted them and their families. And we also wanted to show an increase in safety. So, do you feel safe in your home, in your family, things like that. And again, just creating those circles of support. So really working with the moms that we work with, they often get involved in our circles as well. So it's like, oh, well, my auntie does this, so she can help you with this. And also introducing the women to each other so that they can start supporting each other. So what we're seeing is healthier families, improved prenatal care, increased breastfeeding compared to their previous children. And that's where we're measuring the improved prenatal cares compared to their previous pregnancies if they had them. Safer homes. In the 2 years that we've worked with women, we've had reunifications of children who were already in the system with their families, and they were already in the system for a long time. So in 2 years, we've been able to, I think we're at 12 now, so we've had 12 reunifications. And some of them were the worker at the beginning was they will never be reunified. We've been working on this for years now. And we said, well, you know what, we have faith, and so we have faith in what our grandmothers taught us, and so we need a plan so that we can work towards. And so we're really happy about that. Birth ceremonies, so lots of our moms, keep their placentas now, and we do placenta ceremonies with them. And then we're also seeing women gaining employment and going back to school and all of those things. And so And the way that we designed our MKs, we can capture those things in there. And so we have all kinds of stuff that we're capturing in there. And so it's been really great. And then just to end off, this is our information. So you can email there. We have a website, and also we are on Facebook. So miigwech, thank you all for your time and for listening. And have a great time.